Welcome everyone to the Flourishing Workplace podcast. My name is Connie, and I am so excited to have Corrie Block, Dr. Corrie Block, all the way from Dubai. How is it over there in Dubai right now, Corrie?
It is hot. I'm telling you, Connie, it was 45 degrees today. And that was just outside in my car. You know how you have those temperature things. In Canada, we would see these kinds of numbers in the winter, but not in the summer. Here, it was 53 degrees about 4 days ago. And I swear to you, I was so close. I was this close to baking cookies on the driveway outside the house, just to see if I could do it. But yeah, you can definitely fry an egg outside right now.
Wow. Well, and you used to live in Canada and now you live in Dubai. Maybe tell our listeners a little bit about what it's like to have moved from North America to a place like Dubai.
Okay, so the interesting thing, I've lived outside of Canada, I think now for more than half of my life. I moved out when I was 23, spent 8 years in Estonia, then 5 years in the Middle East, in Yemen. And then I've been 5 years here, no, 10 years here in Dubai. Goodness, time just goes by so fast. But yeah, I've been here for so long now that I don't even know if I'm Canadian anymore. Like, I sound right and I look right. And if I go back to Canada, people treat me like I'm Canadian, but I don't know if I'm really actually Canadian, because in 1998, when we left, I went this way and Canada went this way. And so now there's all of this incredible gap between my culture and the cultures that I've picked up and the culture of Canada that I left behind. So I don't know, maybe I'm Canadian, maybe I'm not. I can sing the anthem and I know who Classified is, but that's about it.
Hey, that's all that matters. That's all that matters. Well, one of the things that you hold so dearly, and this is why I wanted you to come onto this podcast, is because you really care about the workplace. I got your book. Yep. This is a great book. Business is Personal.
Thanks.
And it's wonderful. I wanted us to maybe talk a little bit about this book in our podcast today, because I was reading it and I thought everyone actually needs this. Employees, business owners, because it really gets down to, yourself and your own purpose. But can you share a little bit about what inspired this book, and then we'll dive in?
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, the origin of this is really in a discussion about work-life balance, which has always irritated me. I hate the term. Work-life balance is a myth. It is absolute garbage. Think about the semantics of it for a second, right? You've got work on one side of a scale, life on the other side of a scale, and you're trying to balance them as though there's anything other than your life. Okay, there's not. There's nothing outside of your life, including your work. So I started thinking about where that came from. Like, why would we encourage that kind of psychological dichotomy if it was untrue? And it came from really bad consulting in the 70s and 80s, born out of the shareholder supremacy idea that the shareholders were the most important people in a business and the whole business is there to drive and create value for the shareholders. That relatively new idea, led to really bad consulting that really necessitated us to be able to cut people out of their economic communities. And we call them layoffs and we call them, redundancy and stuff like that. But essentially what we're doing is incredibly psychologically damaging. We're cutting people out of their economic communities for the very first time in human history. That didn't used to happen. It used to be that if you were the cobbler in your city, you would be that cobbler for your entire life, and your city would come to you for those services. Or if you were a metalsmith, then you would be that metalsmith for your whole life. And then we invented this idea that your job was somehow other than your life, so that if we cut you from your job, we could say, oh, don't worry about it. It's just a job. You can get another one. The problem is that we've got like a million years of evolutionary psychology behind this idea that we are what we do, right? And so who we are in society is the job that we're doing. And we need, as humans, to provide a meaningful service to the community that we're in. And those communities are not called tribes and nations anymore. They're called companies. And those are our new economic tribes. And if we're providing meaningful service to those economic tribes, then in return, those economic tribes provide resources for us to take care of our families, educate our kids, take care of our parents, that sort of thing, right? Put gas in the car, food on the plate. So it really frustrated me, this idea that we came up with work-life balance as though there's something other than your life, which there's not, because it's really abusive. And the outcome of it is abusive too. We end up dehumanizing each other, and we ended up calling each other human resources. It was the most horrible term, human resources. Can you imagine? Like how much more veiled slavery can you get than human? Okay, no, human capital is worse. Yeah, human capital is much worse. But yeah, those kinds of terms, they came out of that same sort of consulting theory. And it's been really psychologically damaging for people to be treated like capital or treated like resources rather than treated like humans. So one of my big hashtags online, Connie, is hashtag humans, not resources. And hashtag business is personal. That was another thing. That was the other reason I wrote the book. Was somebody said to me one time, I was negotiating a contract and he said, oh, we're going to go with another provider right now. Don't worry, it's not personal, it's just business. And I was like, mate, no, that's not true. That's not true, because if you don't give this contract to my company, then I can't pay my employees, and then my employees can't feed their children and their parents. And so every decision that's ever made by any business ever, it has a personal impact. It moves resources on the planet from one economic tribe to another economic tribe, and that strengthens one economic tribe and weakens another one. And so all business is always personal. We're never going to get away from that, and work-life balance is a myth. So let's start there.
Oh, I love that. And I love that hashtag, humans, not resources. Did I get that
Yep.
right? That is
Yep.
powerful.
You'll find most of my Instagram and LinkedIn stuff is tagged with hashtag humans, not resources. I also use business as personal, meaningful management, things like that. I really just I want people to live meaningful lives at work. Don't you, Connie?
Yes.
I think, look, you're asleep for a third of your life, right? So you're awake for 2/3, and half of that time you're spending at work. So if you're really disconnected from your job, then you're disconnected from half of your life. If your human life, for example, is a collection of experiences that you gain throughout the entire of your human life, then fully half of that collection of experiences is gained at work. And so I want that to be a meaningful half. I think if people are living their lives and not finding meaning in half of their lives, then that's psychologically damaging to the point of almost being self-abusive. And there's really, really great ways of finding meaning at work without changing your job. This is the key, is you don't have to change your job. Although many people who've read my book have written me and said that they've quit their job as a result of the book. Oh goodness, actually, I got in trouble because I did this training for some people at my wife's company, and one of her people at her company quit as a result of the book, and so I kind of like sideways got in trouble for that. But yeah, it's one of the outcomes of living a meaningful life is that you realize, oh, maybe I'm not actually where I should be, and then you make an effort to go to where you should be. Or you can do what most of the people who've read my book do, is they actually find out that, you know what, this is much more, what I'm doing is much more meaningful than I had thought. And if I find the meaning in what I'm doing, then I'm going to live a happier, healthier life. Your health goes up, the length of your life goes up. People who live meaningful lives tend to live longer lives. So if you can find the meaning in what you're doing at work, you're actually going to add days to your life. And that's the benefit of it.
Yeah. Wow. That's incredible, thinking about adding to your life. And I find that very interesting, about even that lady that quit her job. You did that company a favor, because if she wasn't aligned, I know that
Of course.
Employers are always talking about employee engagement.
Yep.
How do I get my employees more engaged? Well, if they're not aligned,
Yep.
you can do anything that you could possibly think of. You could bring in like a guru to your company to talk to this person, coach this person. But if they're not aligned, that isn't doing anybody any favors. So I think you actually really helped them out, and you helped her out. Everybody's winning, and somebody probably came in that was better aligned.
Yeah, 100%. And I said that too. I said, look, okay, so I'm happy for her because she's going to go off and find out whatever that passion is that she wants, right? I'm happy for the company because they've gotten rid of somebody that wasn't passionate about their job. And that means they were underperforming and they were underutilized, right? And I'm happy for the person that's going to take the job, because out there somewhere is somebody who's super passionate and super qualified for that job. And now they have a chance. And they didn't before because there was somebody in the way. There was a rock in the river, so to speak. And we got the rock out of the river. And now the rock is very happy because the rock is with other rocks. And the river can flow properly because there's now new, fresh, passionate, and qualified human effort coming into it. That means that the whole tribe, the whole economic community is going to perform better because that one piece is much better performing. Everything around it will also be better performing.
Isn't that incredible? So I hope that
Yeah.
encourages employers that sometimes when we let people go or they leave, or, it honestly isn't the worst thing in the world. And I love what you say about, not dehumanizing people, like really thinking
Mm,
about how do we impact people, especially with meaning. And I would
yeah.
love to chat with you about this meaning. Like, why is this so important, Corey?
Well, look, here's the thing. Psychologically, again, humans are very connected to what they do. We have a million years of evolutionary history. We're not going to get rid of that with 100 years of civilization. And we've really only been civilized for, let's say, 100 years. Before that, we had to like beg for food. We maybe ate once a day. We didn't have very long life expectancy. Women weren't even considered people in most societies. Like it's just the history of humanity is pretty rough. So we've got 100 years of civility and a million years of evolutionary momentum. And all of that evolutionary momentum has pushed us to become relevant and meaningful members of a society that provides and protects us, because that's how we survive.
Mhm.
We can't survive on our own, right? I can't hunt and gather for my family all by myself. And, it just makes sense for me to partner with other families so we can hunt and gather together and in groups. Then we can take care of each other. We can protect each other. Some can hunt, some can protect, some can educate, some can nurture. And all of that all happens in groups of families. So we learned as humans very early that strict individualism is fatal and we have to be together. And so now we've built these new kinds of economic communities called businesses where we can be together. And you touched on something that I think is going to be really relevant for a lot of people, especially in the post-COVID era, is redundancy. You said we shouldn't feel bad as employees when we let people go, but actually that's not entirely true. The leaving your job is very different psychologically from being let go. Being let go from your job is the psychological equivalent of a tribe's chief removing one of the tribe's members from the tribe and saying you're going to be excluded from the tribe. Okay, so it's kind of a shunning. You're not
Yeah.
valuable enough to the tribe that we're going to keep you in. Now, keep in mind these are not civilized ideas, but they have a great deal of momentum. But the science behind what happens to people who are involuntarily let go is really compelling. There was two different studies that I read, one from Sweden, which is a highly socialist society, and one from the US, which is a highly capitalist society. And both of those studies followed people who had been let go. So anybody who had lost their job involuntarily. And both studies came up with exactly the same output. That is that your hazard of death goes up by 16% over the subsequent 2 years of having lost your job involuntarily. Now, and it's the same in both societies, and it's two different studies, right? Like two totally different teams finding exactly the same thing. And it's very compelling because when you actually crunch that number down and you figure out how many people in the studies died as a result. And this is controlled, right? Like it's controlled for things like pre-existing mental conditions, alcoholism, drug abuse, all of that stuff is controlled for. After you've taken out all of that stuff, every 234th person will die as a direct result of being let go.
Wow.
And so this is a new number that I've been bringing. I brought this in my previous book. I have that here. This one, Spartan CEO.
Oh.
So I've been bringing this to executives now to say, hey, listen, your humans are not resources. We cannot treat humans as capital. We must treat them as humans. And you have to understand that if you just involuntarily let somebody out of their economic community, for you, you save money on the bottom line. For them, perhaps their purpose in life has been totally shattered. Their income, their sense of security, their sense of safety, their sense of purpose in the world, their identity. How do they introduce themselves at barbecues on the weekend when somebody says, hey, what do you do? And they say, well, I'm unemployed. That means I have no tribe.
Yeah.
Nobody wants my services. I'm not providing any valuable service to any economic community. And so that's incredibly psychologically damaging. And it's only when we start to embrace that and understand it that I've had a number of CEOs now turn to me and say, okay, how do we get through this without letting anyone go? And I've been able to work with a number of companies here in Dubai during and through the COVID crisis to survive as a tribe without letting anyone go. And now that we're kind of on the other side of it, they're reaping the benefits of that. They're reaping the benefits in loyalty and passion and commitment and extraordinary discretionary effort and performance and profitability, because they've built the tribe that's not going to let anyone go. It's
Wow.
absolutely fantastic.
That's
I'll commonly,
wow.
yeah, I commonly use the metaphor as no king in history has ever cut their army because they had no food to give them, right? So the
Mm.
king doesn't say, oh, we don't have any food to give you, go home. The king says, we don't have any food to give you, but there's a town we don't own yet. Let's go sack that town and take those resources, right? And that's a good king's way of saying, hey, listen, we've got too many underutilized resources. We need a new market. Let's go sack a new market. And really highly competitive kings, CEOs, highly competitive CEOs in the market now, they've been using COVID to pivot and take new markets.
Mm. Okay, this is so good. This is so good. Now, just to clarify to my audience that I certainly didn't mean like it feel okay if you have to fire someone. It's more like if they wanted to leave.
Sorry, I didn't mean to take a shot. Like,
sometimes
honestly,
we hold people so closely.
Yeah.
But I just so appreciate how you look at, you mentioned work as a economic tribe, as a community.
Yeah.
And I don't think
Yeah,
we
look,
haven't looked at work like that. We've looked at it as
no,
work.
Connie, there are no companies out there. Okay. Tesla doesn't think anything. Apple doesn't have an opinion. There are no companies. There's only collections of thousands and thousands of individual lives that have all put themselves together on economic projects to play economic games together in order to win resources on the planet, which is much better than the games we used to play. We used to play very violent games. We used to play like my village against your village, my nation against your nation, my empire against your empire. Those were very violent games. Lots of people got hurt, but that's how we used to take resources. We used to literally take them, preferably by killing people and in their sleep if we could. But those were the violent games that we used to play. Now we're at the most peaceful time in human history and we play economic games instead. But if I'm not allowed to kill my competitors on the street, literally with a hammer or a spear, then I'm going to have to get the resources some other way. And the way we do that now is we choose a third-party arbiter, and we call them the consumer or the market or the purchaser. And those people make decisions on behalf of themselves, their families, or their economic tribes, where the resources of the world should go. So should the resources go to team A or team B in the mobile phone game? And should the resources go to team A or to team B in the oil and gas game, right? So we're all playing these economic games on economic tribes and economic teams that we've invented over the last couple of 100 years so that we don't have to play violent games. And now they're wonderful, wonderful, very complex, amazing games. So instead of just having hunters and gatherers and agriculturalists and teachers, now we have social media designers and online influencers, and we have like so much differentiation. There's so much selection now in the options that are available to people if they want to play a certain role on a certain team in a certain game.
Wow. I just so enjoy your perspective on including kind of history into all of this, and also just that resourcefulness of how, you would advise companies in how to be more resourceful instead of like having to, fire somebody, that
Yeah.
taking care of your community. When I hear you talk about, the Spartan game of maybe the race of my company and what we offer into the market, I always say, at least in our team, somebody else is speaking our message, getting out there. And it's not about coming out there cutthroat, but it is coming out there with like, we need to join together as a tribe. We need to be, if there's any marketing game, I think that you've hit it. It's how are we collectively as a tribe really utilizing our people, really taking care of our people, and therefore utilizing all the creativity that we've got to get in front of our market.
Exactly. And you're only going to be able to tap into all of that creativity when you give up on the idea of performance management.
Yes. Okay.
It's
Talk
also
about
a
that.
myth.
Talk about that, Corrie.
Yes. Look, this is not in the book, so you're going to get this all for free, okay? Performance management is a myth too. We made it up as HR professionals to help us sleep better at night, thinking that we have control over what other humans do when we're not watching. It's not true. We don't. Okay. Humans decide what humans do when nobody else is watching, which is like in business, 95% of the time. 95% of the time, your employees are not being managed at all. They're managing themselves. And therefore, all of the performance that you get out of them is performance that they provide for you when you're not looking. Now, an engaged employee will provide great service and good performance. A disengaged employee will provide poor performance, and an actively disengaged employee will take resources away from the economic community when they have the opportunity to do it. Not only will they not work, but they'll actually like use up space and money and resources that you have. They'll eat your food at your restaurant and stuff like that because they're actively disengaged. They'll actually take resources away from the organization when nobody's looking. But what governs all of that is the alignment of people with two things. One is the vision, mission, and values of the organization, and the other thing is with their line manager. So interestingly enough, the Gallup did a 20-year study. There was like 300,000 business units that were involved in this study. And they found that organizations whose employees described themselves as engaged employees, that is that they had more discretionary effort, those companies, they had 41% less absenteeism. Those employees took 2 less leave days every year. They worked an hour more every week, which adds up to about an extra week's worth of work every year, or a week's work of extra work every year. There was 17% better performing, 21% higher in profitability. So like the numbers really add up. And because they're engaged employees, they're happier, okay? And because they're happier and engaged and they find their lives are meaningful, the side effects of having healthier lives, they spend less time in the hospital, less time sick, less time depressed, less time anxious because they have meaningful work, right? And the long-term side effect of that is that they live longer lives, like we were talking about before. So it's a win-win for the organization and for the employee themselves. We're not trying to squeeze out the most that we can get from our employees. That's ridiculous. That's totally horrible. What happens is if we can help people to find the meaning in what they're doing, then it's a win-win for the tribe and for the individual. They live a longer, healthier, happier life, and the company makes more money. That's the bottom line. So this idea, that we find that we help people engage, I think is a really powerful idea. And like I said, there's 2 ways to do that. One is helping to align their personal vision, mission, and goals for their personal lives with the vision, mission, and goals for the organization, because half of their personal life is the organization, right? There's definitely going to be some overlap there, and the book does help with that. And then the second thing is helping them to produce oxytocin at work. And that 70% of the variance on all of those benefits in employee engagement comes down to a single relationship. And that is a relationship between an employee and their line manager. And that relationship is governed by a single neurochemical, and it's called oxytocin. Do you know about oxytocin?
Oh, yeah, I'm a mental health freak. Yep.
Fantastic. Okay. So this was an interesting thing because you're also very much into women's empowerment and gender diversity and equality and inclusion at work. And this is super powerful information for you and for your listeners. It's going to be great. You're going to love this. So women produce and consume more oxytocin in their brains than men do. I don't know if you knew this, but this is one of the ways in which men and women we are equal, but we are not the same, right? Obviously, I've been married forever. You've been married forever. We're not the same. And oxytocin is one of those gender differences. Also, the estrogen that women produce more than men is a known enhancer of the effects of oxytocin, and testosterone that men produce more than women is a known inhibitor of the effects of oxytocin. So not only do you produce and consume more oxytocin, you're just much better at using it when you do consume it. And so there's a higher level of oxytocin in your brain than there is in my brain at any given moment, like in general or on average. So I started thinking, maybe it makes a difference if 70% of the variance on all of those benefits in employee engagement come down to a relationship between an employee and their line manager. Does it matter then if the line manager is a woman? And it does. Yeah. There's a serious profitability impact, as it turns out. Like McKinsey did a study of this for 10, I don't remember how many years the study went over, but they said an increase of 10% in the gender diversity or gender equality index between men and women in decision-making roles in an organization translates to a 3.5% increase on EBIT, which is like hard profit. Okay. So that's cash. That's cash in the bank. And there was another study of the S&P 500 that showed that a 10% increase in gender balance and diversity in decision-making roles led to a 7% increase in market profitability, which, I mean, if for laymen, that means that if you have $1 billion company and you improve the gender diversity on your management staff by only 10%, then your company will be worth $70 million more the year following the year that you do that. So it's no reason, it's no wonder why there's a number of companies now that are following the science and taking a proactive approach to gender balance and inclusion in the workplace.
Wow. There you go, ladies.
Yeah, look, and not to say that the sociological argument isn't valid. It totally is. Like, ethically, yes. Morally, yes, we need to do that. But profitability wise, yes, it also turns out that that's true too. That's also a very good argument.
Well, and I love the numbers, because the numbers tell the story. You know, if anyone was doubting, and of course I agree with you. It's hard not to agree with that. I think that, and it's so, I've never heard those numbers. So that was really enlightening. Corrie, you're just a wealth of knowledge, and I want to encourage people to pick up this book of yours. I want to encourage people to follow you on LinkedIn. Maybe you could let our listeners know, like, what's the best way to keep in touch with you?
Yeah, look, I'm very active on social media. So my channels are LinkedIn, Facebook, and Instagram. I'll make sure that you have the links for this post. Follow me there on social media, and I respond on my social media. So please go ahead and write me. No problem at all. Yeah. And I have a YouTube channel that I don't nurse very much, but I'm going to try to become more active on there too. But yeah, I would really love to hear from you. I love your stories and I collect them. And yeah, I have another book coming out in 2022 that's going to absolutely blow your mind.
Oh, I can't wait. And where can they get this one? And Spartan CEO? Amazon.
Both are available on amazon.com.ca.co.uk. It's available all over the world. So Amazon, Barnes and Noble, anywhere where you can buy books online, you'll find Business is Personal and Spartan CEO.
Oh, that's great. Well, thank you for having such a passion for this, and it's making a difference. And I know that our listeners have been really blown away today. I just know, because it's powerful stuff. And I think that if I have a takeaway from our conversation, it's to go to work today and really just nurture the tribe, nurture the people in the tribe. And you've reminded me of that today.
This is how we've been doing it for 1 million years. We find people we connect with, we provide a meaningful service for those people, and those people bring resources back, and we share those resources. So all of us, we can educate our kids, we can take care of our parents, we can put food on the plate and gas in the tank. That's what we've been doing for 1 million years. It's a best practice.
It's beautiful. Well, thank you again, Dr. Corrie, for joining me today.
Pleasure.